Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a 2020 launch that pays homage to the seminal 1984 Breitling Chronomat, the watch that helped to resurrect Breitling, now under the Schneider family ownership, from its late 1970s malaise and bankruptcy. This is an homage to the comeback watch. Today, we're discussing the Chronomat B01 42 millimeters in stainless steel. You can see that it is 15.3 millimeters thick by a reasonable 50.4 millimeters lug-to-lug with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you get a good sense of the fit of the watch. Now, it's thick, but it's not obnoxiously thick. What I really like is that the bracelet, the Rouleaux style, does not project beyond the lugs. So that measurement of 50.4 millimeters is the true distance across the wrist. There are no projecting end links. Very comfortable, well-stanced, proportional, handsome on a wrist, in my opinion, as small as about 15 centimeters circumference. I think that's the lower limit for wearing this watch. And if your wrist is that size or larger, it's going to look good and feel just as good. Taking a quick look at the Rulo bracelet, this was part of that original watch, and ordinarily this is the kind of design element that would have stayed consigned to the 80s if Breitling hadn't been under the management of Georges Kern, more willing to engage with the company's modern history rather than simply its 1940s through 1970s glory days. Kern has been open to using elements that are distinctive of an era and maybe even endearingly dated, and that is a keyword, endearingly. And that's exactly what the Rulo bracelet is. It brings back the 80s in a big way. First, you can see it has a lovely sort of Lincoln log aesthetic, as it's very short in profile. With these cross sections being so tiny, it's about as fluid as a Rolex Jubilee. So if you can think of the comfort of a Jubilee it wears like that. You can see it also tapers nicely and has these handsome polished intermediates, but also note the alternating polish. You have the polished intermediates, then a solid bar, then the polished intermediates, then a solid bar, and the alternation pattern along with the taper is much appreciated. There's also an artful bevel along the side, and you can see that adds a bit of detail and bright work. Altogether, the aesthetic as well as the feel in the hand, far better than the 1980s version, while retaining the same comfort and charm. You can see pins and sleeves are used for sizing, but pretty much the entire bracelet is sizable, so that gives you more flexibility, provided you have a punch and a block to do the sizing yourself. You have a double fold clasp with twin trigger release, so the twin trigger is the way you want to see this sort of thing, because one trigger isn't enough for security. Two triggers is ideal, and it's far better than the clamshell systems that Breitling has used for a long time. Breitling, now all about land, sea, and air sports, so you don't necessarily have the Breitling wing logo, even on a watch that was inspired by aviation. That original 1984 Chronomat was inspired by Breitling's 1983 work with the Frecce Tricolore in Italy, their aerobatic squadron, effectively the equivalent of the Blue Angels or the Red Arrows, and so the Frecce Tricolore, they contributed several pieces of input that transformed the Chronomat, once a circular slide rule watch, into more of a modern sports chronograph. And you can see a lot of the elements of that original case are brought back here, but more robust for the modern era. You have a handsome case band, sheer and satinated longitudinally. There's a lovely polished bevel that runs the length of the case. And then you can see that the lug hoods are polished, and the lugs themselves are fairly tapered. They're integrated into the case band. The chronograph triggers are oblong, and the crown is that classic Chronomat onion style, domed style. There are shear guards here, but you can see the shear guards don't simply flank the crown. They actually act as shoulders for the pushers as well. It gives the watch a robust and handsome look. And in good taste, there is an alternation between polish and satin for contrast. Look at the bezel construction captive. So you can see these little screws fix the bezel to the case, meaning it is hard to knock this bezel off. A snap-on bezel like a Tag, Omega, or Rolex can be snapped on just as easily as it's snapped off. That's wonderful if you're a watchmaker putting it together and taking it apart, but for the customer who wants absolute durability, the screw-fixed captive bezel system offers the most. You get that on a Zinn, you get that on a Breitling, and it's a calling card of both, as it is very robust, and it proves they're going the extra mile. Now, though this is a pilot's watch, it has a unidirectional dive-style bezel. It has those 80s-style rider tabs, which were another signature of the 1984 Chronomat, and you can see that the detailing of those is superb, as they're satinated across their top, but then they're polished on their flanks, which is a detail I did not expect on a watch in this price point, or from Breitling. The bezel itself is all of high polish. Listen to the ratchet. It is 120 click and very precise. So the Chronomat has a minute register that goes up to 30, but the nice thing about a dive-style bezel is that it allows you to time from 0 to 60 minutes. So you can time an event that is less than an hour but more than 30 minutes, and then you can time a concurrent event using the chronograph. Now the watch features the tone-on-tone dial that Georges Kern wants you to see and think in-house caliber. So you've got black registers with a little sort of stamped azurage or concentric pattern, and the black registers are on a blue sunburst dial, so that tone-on-tone black on blue tells you there is a manufacturer movement in here. You also see that there are rhodium-plated, steel-polished indices, no printed features, and then there is that Breitling B without the wings, because Breitling, once again, is now a full-function sports watch company, not just about aviation. There's a nicely hidden date with a black disc inside the black register for chronograph hours down at 6 o'clock. When you screw that crown out, and by the way, the watch is 200 meters water-resistant, you screw the crown out, now you pull the crown out all the way. It does have hacking or stop seconds. The watch also features a quick set date, so you can rapidly cycle the date if the watch runs down or encounters an irregular length month. Caliber B01 uses a vertical clutch, which means when you start the chronograph, there's no jump or stagger to the chronograph seconds hand. Moreover, you can just leave it running. One of the vertical clutch's virtues is that there's no additional wear and tear to the watch if you leave it running, so you can have your center seconds, minutes, and hours. Just ignore the rest of the chronograph. There is no hazard to movement. Leave it running full time. There's also a vertical clutch in combination with a column wheel, and it's that column wheel, listen to the pusher, it's the column wheel that gives the watch the crisp pusher feel. Turning it over, 47 joules, automatic winding, 72-hour power reserve, 5-position adjusted, 8 beats per second, and a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. This is Breitling's manufacturer chronograph caliber B01. You can see that it uses Edicron for fine adjustment, which is excellent. So that allows the watch to really be dialed in by the watchmaker, the better to earn the chronograph and, well, I should say, chronometer certificate. It also uses a winding bearing rather than a jeweled staff system, and I like to see that because winding bearings tend to spread the load a little bit better than a staff system. It's overall a good-looking movement. The B01 was not designed back in 2009 when it first launched to be seen in a display case back, but it comes off quite well. As you can see, polished element, satin element, a few handsome details like the visible column wheel. Overall, worth the price of admission and worth a sapphire case back. Guys, this is the newest Chronomat. Rouleaux Bracelet, looking the part of the 1980s, but with fit finish materials, altogether very much the 21st century. A lovable and wearable Breitling sports watch in 42 millimeters. This is the Chronomat B01 with Rouleaux Bracelet in stainless steel. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Back with the Chronomat B01 by night. Note all of the sub-register hands are loomed.